Hi, in this video I'm going to show you how to put together this 3D camping lantern, which is a 3D SVG file from Simply Crafty SVGs. Here I'm just showing you what it looks like once you put a battery operated LED light within it. So this is the completed lantern, or one of the versions of it. So I kind of do it sideways here. So it seems like that it would lift the whole thing up, but it doesn't. It's just the top. So you can add a little battery operated tea light inside, and then there's a little power button, which obviously does not work. And this is rounded so it can go in. So I'm using a different kind of light, and I'll explain it, but it just twists to go on. You can get remotes with this too, but then when you put it in there, it's kind of like a hanging lantern. Something I wanted to use on a couple of my lanterns, but I haven't done so yet. But that's a changing light one. So I'll show you how I put the holes in there, just in case if you want to use something like that. I'll explain it at that point. So here are all the pieces. I'm going to start with the base. So if you have the base pieces, this is what we're going to have. So this is some little pieces that I'm going to put aside, and the light piece and the lid pieces. So what you want to do is find these little panels, and they go with this. So I've already pre-folded these. When you fold this, you want to fold these down all in the mountain fold, so all around, and then these little tabs on the side. And then when you fold this down, you want to fold this one up with the valley fold. So mostly mountain, just that one, so it makes it straight on the side. So if I show you the test, you see it's angled right there, but then straight right there. So let's go ahead and add the panels first. So I'm going to just add a couple panels to show you, and they fold. Oops, I forgot to tell you that they do angle. So if you did want to I'm going to show you how to put them on, but what you might want to do is ink the edge. I just printed this so it's not solid core, so it's white, so I'll probably ink it with a little brown ink once I get it on. So probably at the very end, before I put the button on, I'll do that. But to put these on, fold them, and then add some glue. Don't add a ton of glue. I just have it kind of clogging on me. It's a day of clogging glue today. Just cleaning it out with a little pin. And then I'm going to go ahead and just add it around the edges. Don't get too close, as you don't want it to leak out the side. So I just wanted to clean it off a little bit. Then I start at the top. So when you do it, start at the top, line up, center it on the left and right of the panel, and then press it into that fold. You can just align it down so you see you have space on either side. You could put this on later, but it's really not going to hinder you to put it on now. But you could do it afterwards too. Just as long as you don't create another fold, you should be okay. You can't really put it on flat, but it's up to you. You can put it on later. If you were going to put it on later, you'd put it on after we assemble this side piece. But this way you can kind of get to it, and you can flatten it a little bit, apply pressure on all the pieces. So I'm going to finish putting those on, and then we'll move on to putting it together. So now that we have the panels on, we're going to go ahead and glue these together. So we're going to glue one of these side tabs. I'm just going to put the whole thing together. So we're going to line this up, this edge right up to the fold. You can see I didn't line up that. This is what happens if you put a panel on it incorrectly. They kind of jet out a little bit. it'll be fine once I fold it. But so that's what it looks like on the other side. And we're not going to close it up yet. We're just going to start gluing the tabs. So we're going to glue these little side tabs here. So if this is not folded up like that, it's going to be hard to glue. So just make sure you have those kind of pre-folded in a valley fold, or you're going to have a little bit of difficulties. And you want to kind of get the glue. This is where I'm using art glitter glue and American Crafts textured cardstock. But you want to make sure you get your glue pretty applied on this little tab, because it's kind of a teeny tab. Instead of doing 6 separate pieces, I decided to do 2 separate pieces. Normally something like this, depending on the size of the reason why we'll separate them out, if you've done other like hexagonal type or octagonal, is to make it bigger tabs really, so you don't have to fight with a teeny tab like that. So that's not too small, so I decided to do it in 2 pieces rather than 6. Then it's a little bit less steps. So we'll just continue to glue these side pieces, so you can follow along as I do that. And then I'll start, you'll just hear some music for a little bit, and I'll start talking when we get to the closure of it. So when you get to this part, you still want to glue. I have a fairly large tab for these tabs. We want to glue this tab underneath the adjacent edge, and make sure you line it on top and bottom between these folds, these scores. And also just make sure you don't overlap, because you don't want to overlap that, and the same thing on the top, because you need a little space to put the panel on the top. So when you get to this part, you can reach in a little bit. I just folded it in, and do the last 2, and just make sure that you really hold those with all the other tabs as well. So it gets a little bit always dicey when you close anything like this. It's not dicey, it just takes a little extra effort. So I'm going to do that top one first. The straight one. So I haven't folded that other one in yet, the little one. Just wanted to get this one lined up. So I kind of had to push it down a little bit. Then I'm just adjusting it to get that last one in place. And I can apply pressure there. So there we got it. So we're going to go ahead and put the top part. We're not going to put the bottom on yet. So what we're going to do, I'm going to glue it on the inside for this one. You can glue it on top too. But I'm going to put glue on one of these inside tabs there. See that? I'm going to anchor just one edge of it. So I'm gluing the non-textured to the non-textured. It glues better, in my opinion. Make sure it's in place on that one tab. Just fold it in. Then we just go ahead and add glue on the rest of these tabs, and we're going to just fold them down And we can apply pressure from either reaching in with our hands or just placing it upside down and using something like a chopstick, wooden chopstick or something like that. It's a wide enough, as long as you keep it at the current size, it's wide enough to reach in. And these tabs will be hidden by the circular part that will go on this. So I'm just flipping them over, pushing that down to make sure it doesn't interfere. And I'm just going to do this. So I'm just reaching in and applying pressure against, and you can push in the edges too to make sure, but it should fit right in once you get that one anchored. And you can kind of turn it over, make sure that everything glued okay. So the next step, do not put the bottom on yet. Let's do this top piece. And I kind of mixed them up, so I gotta find it real quick here. So it even happens to me, sometimes I forget which one goes with what. So this one is for the one that faces, the tab faces to the left goes with these pieces. The one to the right goes with the lid. So you can always reference that on the PDF file that is found with the file. So what we want to go ahead and do is, this is going to be circular, so this is going to go around. This is the part that's going to hold this light piece. So this is the piece that we're making right now. So you can go ahead and kind of curl it a little bit, and there's a little cut mark there. Now you don't want to fold it there, you just want to use it as a guide. We're just going to line that up to that, but not quite to it. We're just going to go right to it. Not over it, just right to it. So go right up to it, and then you're just going to hold it. So we're just going to hold it until it dries a little bit. And to make it easier for this to assemble, we have these two panels. One will go inside, and one will go underneath to cover the tabs. And that little hole is just so we can line it up with this, so we can make sure it's centered. So nobody's really going to look inside. I thought about, you can always make this, if you cared about this hole being seen on inside, you could always just weld something over that with your software, but it really is helpful to have it open. Or you could put another piece in there. So once we get them all folded, we can go ahead and add glue on them, on like half of them, or all of them, but I don't think you get all of them without it getting a little bit dry, depending on the glue you're using. So I'm just going to kind of hit half of them and just flip it over and get the other half. So I don't want too much glue on the sides there. So I almost got half there. So I'm going to go ahead and place the texture side up. Then I'm going to start on one edge here. Then just go around and apply pressure. So I'm just guessing where I ended up. I can flip it over to look. Pretty close. Or you could do that as well. So I'm just going to flip them up, add glue to the other side, so I had a little glue on that. So it just helps to do the circular items this way. I mean, then you don't have to just place it on top and make sure that you get it lined up. This just helps you line it up. Even though we're using an extra piece of paper, it's well worth it. I've done it both ways. And a little bit extra paper. It's not a big deal compared to the frustration of trying to match up a circular panel to a bunch of tabs like this on top. In my opinion, at least. But you can always do that. Those that like doing that always have that option. So we're just going to get around the edges, make sure it's good and glued, and we have that edge into the tab folds. So now we're creating that little lantern light place to put the light. And then this just goes on the back. So I just want to make sure that we're just covering all these tabs. And we want to get as close to the edge as possible, so we don't want it to have a huge gap. So you do want to spend the time once you get the glue on, and be careful with the amount of glue. Know your glue, how much you can use before you use it, so you don't have rippling issues. So now we're just going to go ahead and cover that. And see that little hole comes in handy because it helps us line it up. And then we can just go around. And if we do see a little glue leak out, we can wipe it away. I just have to get a little wet paper piece of towel. I usually have one handy. Gotta cover my glue so it doesn't dry up. What we're trying to do is just make sure that there's not a huge gap like that. So that's why I'm pushing hard against the mat. And I did get one side a little wet. It will dry up. It's a little bit too damp. So spend the time to do that. I'm going to do it with my fingertips. This glue dries clear, so it's art glitter glue again. But you really want to, if you don't want a gap, the other thing you can do, and I'll do, is after I get this glued on, we can get my little, right now, go ahead and ink it. Whatever ink you use to do this kind of thing. You could use ink, or what's nice, it kind of cleans up those edges. So I'm gonna just do that right here. Excuse me. And then if you wanted to do have to be careful with this. If you wanted to do that little line, you could. If you didn't like it being, just tone down that white inner core paper. Like I said, it's a digital paper I used. And it hides imperfections, which is nice. And this is not something easily accessible. I just have some really old, these are from Quick Quotes. If you've never heard of the company, they do a lot of scrapbook expos, which during the pandemic they're not doing any, but that's where I got them. Excuse me, I got a frog in my throat. So now, before we put the bottom on, we want to line up the front, the top. So you can see we're going to line up the circles to get it on there. So you want to add glue to this. Get as close to the edge as possible, without it going down the sides, of course. Then line it up. So line up the openings. Make sure it's so it can help us center it. And I'm going to reach in and just apply additional pressure to get that glued on. Initially, I tried to, I made it so you would attach this to that with tabs, but it was a little bit awkward. I think this is easier. I'm never satisfied with what I end up with. I always think, every time I go through it, I'm thinking I could have improved this, I could have improved that, but on to the next. I can improve it on the next one. So now you can kind of push it down. But you don't want to push it down too hard because of course that's just an edge. And then we can put this bottom piece on. Now that we could help line it up. Did you need to go outside? Here you go. Go ahead. Go ahead. So now we can go ahead and add this bottom piece now that we lined up that circular piece. The light, we want to say, I would say glass holder, but it's just the light portion that's going to be held. So I'm going to line this up, just line up one side. Like that. And if you hear the bell behind me is my dog scratching herself. I'm not going to stop the video. She's already stopped me a couple times. We have bells on the dogs because one recently went blind, and we want them to hear each other so they don't walk into each other. At least the one that's blind knows what other dog is near her. Because one is not very kind when she gets walked into. She doesn't know that the one is blind. So we're going to carefully fold it over. And you go from edge to edge. So I hope there's dog lovers out there because she's really putting a show on verbally. She's rubbing on the floor. So really going around this, line them up, and you have a little time to do that as the glue dries. And then I just rub on the tabs and just make sure that they're set in place, and then I can turn it over and do this. So we're going to do the top part of the lid. So it's this piece right here, these two pieces together. So these are this is the top, that goes with that, and then this is the second level. So we want to get it folded like this. So it should be folded. And then the same thing here, the way you fold these are, the wider one is going to go on the bottom. You want to fold it like that and then fold it back because it will eventually glue to the inside of this. So we'll go ahead and put these together. So once you have them folded, you just want to go around and glue the sides. So do one at a time. So you can do the bottom one first. You can do the top one too. It doesn't really matter. And the top one will angle, but you want to make sure that that bottom one is good and secure so it doesn't pull up when you glue that top one. And as you continue around, you could start at the top too. It doesn't really matter. I just think it's easier to start on the bottom one because it's fairly straight. It's up and down, and the other one's angled. But you can see it pulls away if you don't wait for it to glue long enough. And if you'd like to see, you know, give me a little like if you like this video and you'd like to see more 3D designs like this. Always appreciate if you subscribe as well. Be really careful about getting glue on this because it will be seen. So if you have a little paper towel handy to get any excess. Of course the inking always comes in too. It's always handy. So it's a little bit, I went with the harder one first because it's smaller. So really it's just knowing how long your glue takes to dry. So I started on the top one that time. So it's really no different, but the same issue where you need to make sure. And that's another thing, I didn't line it up. So bottom was easier to line up. So I just pulled it off just in time, but be careful with that. So I'll just fold that down. And I'll have to hold a little extra long on that one because I pulled a little bit of the top coating of the paper off. Then the last one. And the reason I couldn't make it one piece is just the size of the tabs would be extremely small. I do try to do that at times for these kind of pieces, so you don't have to do all this one at a time. So I start at the top again on this one. So if you do the top, I would say make sure it's lined up and then kind of fold it underneath, get it in place. But I find it pulls away, so I'll just hold that in place. And so the last one we will go ahead, I'm going to carefully reach in and add glue to those last tabs. Remember to do the bottom part first because I seem to be more successful doing that. And we're not going to add the top piece quite yet. It'll allow us to get in there if we need to attach these pieces together. So this is what it looks like on the inside. And that's the reason we pre-folded all this, because we don't want to put the stress. It makes it looser, so when we do go to insert it, it's a little bit easier. So we'll put that aside. And we'll take this piece and add glue to this tab. And you want to line this edge up, not over it, just up to this little tab fold here. Otherwise you'll have some trouble. If you go too close, it makes it too small and it causes some problems getting this all attached. So there's two ways you can attach this. You can attach this over here and then insert that, or we're going to do it this way. We're going to take this piece and we're going to glue it underneath like this. So you want to get it good and flat, so you want to get good coverage of your glue. We're going to start with one piece first. Make sure that the texture's up because that'll be seen. And be careful with glue showing there. we're going to go ahead and get one set in place in one side. So I'm just lining up that edge. And we can easily reach in and glue that tab, but make sure it's good and flat, because when we glue it on the next section, we don't want it to be pulling up. You'll see. So I'm going to go to the tab directly across from the one that I started on, because that'll help me set this in place. I like to do that with any shapes like this. Because then it allows me to set the remaining ones a little bit easier. So we'll do the rest of them. Just make sure you just gently kind of pull it up to where it meets the fold. And then we'll do the other two. That kind of looks like this green looks like a little leprechaun hat. I mean, I have one like this, but I didn't even notice it until I was putting it together. Looks like a little miniature leprechaun hat. I mean, we do have a little leprechaun hat, like I said, but that's funny. So there's another use for this if you made it bigger. Of course, this needs to be further out. So the good thing about paper is it's pretty pliable, so I'm just kind of bending it into shape after I get all those tabs glued on. And then we're going to go ahead and glue this on the top here. And before that, let's just do this. So this is going to glue on top of this piece. So you won't see any of the tabs. So we can put the tabs on the bottom of this. So what we'll do to make it easy is glue this. So the side with the larger tabs are for this piece. So we're going to glue this on the inside. So I'm going to want to... it doesn't really matter which way because you're not going to see the bottom. This circle is for a purpose, and you will be shown shortly. So we'll flip these up, flip this in, try to clear all these tabs here. So what we'll do is we'll just add glue to all these tabs and then fold them over and apply pressure from the inside. Again, this is the bottom, and it's going to glue to the other section, so it will not be seen. I'm just clearing it enough so I can get the glue on the tabs. So flatten them out. Let's see, start at the one that we glued already. Then I'll just go around the edges and apply some pressure to get that set in. So it just sits right into the inner fold down there of all those tabs. And we don't have to fight to put it in, which is nice. So this one, so we can add this top piece. Let's just go ahead and do that while we can reach in. I changed the design slightly between the time I did this video and the last time I assembled it. So I'm just going to anchor this piece, this one tab, to one side. Then you want to make sure these are kind of up a little bit, but it's okay because we're going to be able to reach in to apply pressure. So let me fold this back to get glue on these tabs. So this will add the top piece. So when you fold it over, you just want to fold it over kind of carefully. Trying to line it up to all the edges. And it could be just a smidgen off because of the way that your tabs get glued. Once you get it into place, I gotta make sure it didn't shift on me. Just go ahead, flip it over, and add pressure to the tabs inside. So here's the final. We're just going to attach that to the top there, so you can go ahead and anchor one piece. So this is another trick I like to do. I kind of fold the piece out like that. Just carefully, and then just line up one piece, one side. Allows me to kind of get it flush into that fold. Because it has something on top, I'm going to use this little plastic. This is my plastic. Got this from IKEA. Just want to do lightly to get it set. Plastic, what do you call it? Oh, chopstick. I kept on not saying the right word. I use wooden ones all the time too, but I was reaching for one and I had this plastic one, so I just grabbed it. Wooden ones are cheaper, although IKEA was really cheap. So we're just adding glue to these remaining tabs, and then we'll just flip it over, just trying to line up those edges. Then once we get it set, we can flip it over and kind of get inside that little hole with that chopstick. So I start with the one adjacent to the one that I glued and anchored. Kind of softly go around so I can adjust it. And then you can try to get into there with your finger. That's going to be easier to apply pressure. And I'm carefully going around the edges, holding the other side. Or you could do it the opposite and use that other hand, one hand, to anchor it underneath. And my edges are up just a little bit, so let me go ahead and add a little bit extra glue in there. Put a little glue on this. So if you have that, you can go ahead and try to get in there and add a little bit more glue. I just didn't put enough towards the edges there. And this is where the inking would come in handy. But you can see there it's closing up a bit as I do this. And that one I just didn't reach the edge very much. I just didn't line up as well. So that one's just the way it is. So that's when the inking comes in handy. to rough it up and kind of get those rough edges if you have any. It also gives it more personality, in my opinion. That's the nice thing about ink. It just changes the look of it, and I kind of wanted a grunge look anyways with this particular. So there it is. So a special note before we go on, if for some reason you want a different look. So I have this handle. The handle's slightly smaller on the final, but this is what the handle essentially looks like, and it glues to the side. But if you want to do something like a metallic hanger, you would have to get in here and make the holes prior and like twist the wire in. So here's a version of it really early. I know it's all kind of mangled because I was working with it. So if you wanted to put it higher up like here, you'd have to do it before you glue this piece on. So I punched little holes here, and yes, this is a test piece, completely test piece. But I decided to go with the paper handle rather than show people how to use wire, because not everybody has that in their repertoire, I should say. So just a side note. So let's go ahead and put this last part of the handle together, I mean the lid together. So that's the panel that goes on top. So this will go with that. So we just need to fold these. And you'll see we have the smaller tabs go on this, and the larger tabs will glue to this. So what this would be is that this is the insert, what goes into the light for the lid. So for this, this is the other one, so you'll see the tab, if we have it facing up, the tab's on the right. And this is, we want to go ahead and curl it, so we're going to do similar to that we did on the holder part on the bottom for this, without the light. So we're going to go ahead and add glue to this, and do not fold it, that's just a little guideline. So we're going to go right up to it. So get that edge right up to that cut line, lining it up on the top and bottom. So this is what we're going to make right here. So these little tabs are going to go underneath in here. So you can fold them in to train them in once this is dry. But then we're going to fold them out. We can't fold them outward yet, but we're going to fold them outward to glue to the inside of this other piece. So we're going to do that. So now we can go around and do this. Display them the other way. So this is upside down. What we're going to do is carefully place this around here. And it'll fit like that. Before we go any further, we have two options in how we can add the glue. We can add it directly to this, but we want to be careful not to get it on the side there. Or you could just add it to each of the tabs. And I'm going to do the tabs. I know it's a lot, but you don't have to do them all at once. You kind of have to push them down at once, but you could do half of them at once, and so we'll do half. So just make sure the textured side is towards the flat end, because that's the part that will be seen. I'm just seeing how far we get here. So we want them all, even if I'm doing half of them, they all have to be outward like that. I'm just going to push it down. And I just made one, make sure one of these flat ends are kind of towards the back seam. And we're just going to push it all the way down, even though we don't have glue on all the tabs yet. And just apply pressure. I got to see where they are. There they are. So once we get it flat, we can apply pressure to where the glue is. And then we can, a couple dried before I got to the end there. So just add the rest of them and do the same to get them in place. Make sure there's no tabs that flip inside, inward. There we go. And then I can go ahead and get the individual tabs that may not have glued correct down, okay, if I need to. So that's going to be like that. So just get the last remaining pieces if you need to. So now we're going to glue these pieces together. I'm going to add glue to this long side tab here. You can flatten it. I've already folded it, as you can see. You can line this edge up to the fold. And because there's no angle in this, we can go ahead and lay it flat like this. And then fold this over. Fold the one with the remaining tab on it over, and then to allow us to easily glue this tab. So this piece is going to glue right here on the bottom part, and then we'll have this on the top. So it doesn't really matter which one's which. We want to get it kind of accurate on the bottom, so I think we'll do the bottom first. So let's get one of these anchored to this one tab. And then we'll go ahead and glue the rest of them. And since I'm getting a little tired, I'm missing my glue a little bit here. Try to get as close to the edge as you can, and I can see that one of my tabs came loose. So let's handle that first. So what's nice about this is that once we place it and get it in place, so I'm going to do each side here, then we can reach in from the other side and really get it, make sure that we get it glued really well. And I can reach in like this too. So actually this is easier. So make sure you have any kind of, I'm just wiping excess glue if it comes out. I want to make sure that I'm getting this the edges pretty well. So going around it one more time, making sure it's good and secure, and if not, I can always add a little glue in there. So there's the bottom of it. And again, if you have any gaps, go ahead and fix those. And then you can do something, you can ink it or that kind of thing. So the last thing we need to do is, or the last couple things for the lid, is to add this piece. So let's go ahead and add this panel. So what these holes are for, they're optional, but you're not going to see them. If you don't use them, you're not going to see them. So it really doesn't matter they exist. I thought about doing one without holes. But at the beginning I showed you a lantern that could hang, these kind of LED lights that can hang. So you can turn them on and they have remote controls. And I thought they're fun because they're for like balloon lanterns, that kind of thing, and I thought it would be fun. So I made it so it could be, those could be used, because you know with the real lantern you have hanging light. So here's a little piece of twine, so if you want to do that. Important notes here. You don't want to tie it too tight. You want it hanging down a little bit so you can get like a little wire S hook thing in it. So I'm going to add a little bit like that. You can see that. I'm going to just tie a knot. So that's what this hole is all about right here. So if you do put that in there, then it won't cause any issues with putting that on there. So I want to make sure that it's where I want it to be. If not, I mean, twine's cheap enough. So yeah, that looks about what I want this time. The first one I did, it was a little bit too tight. So I'll go ahead and clip this excess off. And then I got this little coated, I have this coated wire that I use. And you can use a real tool, but I'm just going to make a little impromptu little S hook. So once you get it together, I can place this in there and be able to place, I mean, I'm making it look simple now because it's, you're going to have to reach in, but, and then it can hang like that. You can see it from the side, it can hang. So that's what that's for. Again, if you don't want to use it, you can just put a battery operated tea light or something like that, or candle inside. It's just the same. So we're just going to go ahead and glue this to the top. So I'm going to determine which one I want the front to be here. So one more time, we're just going to anchor a piece. So I'm going to do it like this time. Whatever you want the front to be, you probably want this to be parallel to it. So I'm just lining that up. It's going to work no matter what, so it doesn't really matter if you decide, oh, I don't like that side, once you get it glued. Or if you have a pattern that requires it to be the front, like this. This is the stripes. I kind of made the front and back the end of the stripes. And then we'll go ahead and just add this on. Since we've done this many times, I'm not going to make you watch the whole thing. So I do want to show you that once you get it together, that you can reach in and apply pressure with your hand or with the tool like this on the tabs. So there's the top piece. So you can't go easily get in there. I tried to keep the openings open that I could. And then we go ahead, and you can either put this on first, or it doesn't really matter. So we can go ahead and put this on. So it doesn't, I would just pick what you want the front to be and then make it the best side. So I have a couple of gaps, I'm going to fix that. But I think I'm going to make the front's either that one or this side, but I need to fix that gap, so I think it's going to be this side. So you get to kind of plan where all your things are here. So I'm going to put it right there. So I didn't put any cut lines or anything to help you line this up, because if they're off, then you'll be able to see them. So I sat back for a second to put glue on this, because that's how I naturally craft. So what I would do is kind of stand up, situate it the way you want it, this piece. So just squish that in. Determine what you like the best, the front, and center it. Making sure that it lines with all the sides, so you might have to rotate it slightly. And then you can apply pressure by reaching in. So for this last piece, we're going to do this part. So what I would highly suggest for this, because this is not as simple as it seems, you might want to cut a test piece of copy paper, not vellum, just to test the process for you and wrapping it around, so see what works for you, so you don't waste vellum. So you can do that. The thinness of the copy paper is a good consistency, and you could actually even use copy paper. This is not copy paper, but you could print it yellow and use that instead of vellum. But I will explain. So this is not the last, we still have the handle, but it's one of the last things. So I use score tape because it's somewhat clear, and I pulled them all up with my little piercer, so you didn't have to see how painful it was for me, because I don't have nails. I have a bad habit of breaking them, tearing them, whatever. It's a nervous habit. One day I'll make sure I stop doing that. I try to, but anyways. So nobody needs to hear about that. So I'm going to tear this off. So I'm going to kind of bring it up. So I'm going to do this carefully. push it down so I don't have any bumps. You can try to use glue. It will show a little bit. I've done glue before and it'll give you a little bit more wiggle room. But if you do the tape, it's not as visible. So it's up to you what you want to do. Like I said, testing it with the test piece of maybe copy paper. But do you see there's two little cut marks? So I just put the tape or glue right to the right of these cut marks. And this is vellum that has been printed yellow. It's slightly discolored here because of a tag that was on it. But there's two little cuts. So what we're going to do before we do it, because you only have a one-time chance when it comes to this tape, really. I mean, there's a way to undo it, but I'm going to flip it over with this tape up. And what you're going to want to do is line this up, this edge up, to those two cut marks, also lining it up right here. So I'm going to actually put it like this. You don't want to fold it. I'm going to do it as slow as possible so I don't mess up. You don't want it over, so I'm focusing on the top one and then the bottom one. So I almost did it. I was looking at the bottom one, the top one came out of alignment. So I'm not saying this is the easiest part, but I wanted a round look, so this is the way that I'm going to get it. I'm just going to maneuver that a little bit. So this is fair warning that this is not the easiest step. Okay, so I just pressed it once I got it in place. So I'm going to show you with this piece. I would place this in the back. And what we're going to do is add that top strip, which is not simple either. I mean, it's not the simplest. And then we're going to add glue. So I've already done this once, so I accidentally made it too small. So you might want to pre-fit it in. Like I said, practice is helpful on this step. But we're going to add a little glue right here and just kind of press it in after we get that top strip on. So now, the top strip, same thing. It really is top or bottom, but I made the bottom smaller than the top because I can see I didn't match it up there. So I want to make sure that this will fit in, which it will. And that top's to help secure it and give it a kind of a finishing look. So I was a little bit off right there with my lineup, but it still fits in here in the short end. So if you do that, make sure the shorter side is glued to the bottom. So this is the shorter side, that's the longer side that I was a little bit off on. And you could always trim it too if you're worried about it. So what I found, I used glue, and you can see it really well, and it doesn't look good. So I used tape on one side and in the middle a little bit to help guide once you get there. Again, this is one of those things that you're going to want to be really careful with. The fortunate thing is you can recut things, but I'd rather you not waste your vellum if you're using vellum, because it is not the cheapest product paper out there. And a lot of us don't have a ton. So I'm going to put it on the top. I'm going to line it up. So I'm going to line it up with this towards the top. And it can be a little bit above it. And I'm just going to see where I'm at here. So it went crooked. So here's a cool little stuff. This is why I don't like using double-sided tape, by the way. Trying to find my stuff. It's called Undo. So if you've never used Undo before, you can put it on your adhesive. It doesn't work on glue, but on adhesive like this, you can pour it on and it'll, you can see it's wet. You can test it with your different papers, but what happens is it dries clear. So you'll see how miraculous this is. It is like a petroleum base, so just be aware of that. So if you want to wear gloves or if you need to, and you can see that it didn't, I maybe bent it a little bit when I was taking it, but it didn't discolor it. So this is the challenge of putting this top piece on. So if you do it flat, so let me explain to you if you do it flat. Some people will say, why don't you do it flat? So you can, but you got to be really, really careful when you put it on flat. And the reason I say that is, here's one flat, and you can see like little dimples. Because when you start I put it on flat and then I rolled it up. When I rolled it up, these got dimpled underneath. So that's another option. I could have eliminated this altogether and just not use this, but I was determined to do the file this way. So I'm gonna go ahead and, so the critical thing is to get it lined up the first time. So because I have a crooked, I'm lining it up, making sure it's lined to the top. And I'm going to carefully go around. I'm going to check it as I go around. My hands are so dry and that stuff didn't help. So it wasn't perfect. So you could do one line of tape as well, as I did that on the other one. And I'm just going to trim it a little bit up here. So this is just not a matter of, I'm not going to trim it right now. But this is not really a matter of, this is a matter of me choosing a harder technique. So you can see it's a little bit underneath, but that's okay. So now we're just going to add, if you want this look, that's unfortunately the process I came up with. If somebody can find a better way to do it, I'm always up for suggestions. So I tried many different ways before. Then I'm just going to add a little glue to the inside of this. I'm not doing much, I'm just doing it towards the bottom. And I already did this once and decided I had to fix it. And I'm going to match the seam up pretty much with the back seam there. So we can just distinguish what the back of it is. And be careful when you put it in, it will go in if you test it beforehand. Kind of rotating it. And when I rotate it, it's kind of helping because it's grabbing the glue. So you can see the glue inside. You can go in there and apply additional pressure, but pretty much it'll get stuck at one point as long as it's not too small. So I think I did this, I tested this method probably about at least 10 times to try to get the sizing right. So we're going to let it dry, but you see it'll sit right in there. So now we're going to do these, the little power button and the handles. So let's do the handle first. Well, actually we'll do the power button since I dropped it out here. So all this is layering it. So we're going to layer this onto this bigger one. It's the same exact size, so this is where the fine tip applicator comes in handy. Just lightly going down. You could pop it up too if you wanted dimension, but I'm going to pop the entire thing up. So I wanted to have the detail so you can kind of see the cutout on the black, even though it's black on black. If you really wanted to pop out, you could put a different color, like maybe a gray or something on the back of this. But it does show when you're looking at it directly. So here's the other one, which is brown. And if you look, you can see when you look at the front of it. So we're going to use a little, just trying to find my scissors, we'll just tear it. So one thing I do like about this foam tape, I got a new foam tape that has a plastic backing that some may have seen in my group. But the plastic backing, I can't tear. I can't tear with my fingers. But I had to cut this anyways because I did it too big. So we want to put it on the back of this. And still a little bit too large. Should have used my smaller one. So this is a Scotch foam tape. I like the other one, but it's harder for me to tear off the backing. I have a ton of it. I think it came in 36 feet, so I'll be using it soon on videos. Going through the rest of this. So we're going to go ahead and just center this on that. I just made sure the texture side was up. And I didn't center it great. So So again, this is where something like undo comes in handy, so I'll show you it in action. I don't think I've ever showed this on my videos, so just kind of squirts out. Oh, I had the lid on. That would help if I took the lid on. And it's kind of scary the first time you kind of use it, but then it slides right off. So, you know, you look at it and you go, is that ever going to get colored, go back to its color? That's the amazing thing that sold me on this years ago. I can't remember, it was a scrapbook expo or something like that that somebody introduced me to this. So you'll see that it's, while it's still wet, nothing will really adhere. And then once it dries clear. So while that's happening, let me fold these. So we'll go back to that in a minute. And this gets sticky again, by the way. Just takes about a minute or so. But it does dry my fingers out a little bit. So if you feel like you need to use some gloves or wash your hands afterwards, and I'll do that in just a moment. So this is for the, I'm folding these have little score marks in them, and they're cut score marks, so anybody using any machine will get this cut. So I just do it's a mountain fold in the middle, and then a valley fold going back. So those two go like that. So the way it attaches is like this. And I consider the front with where we're going to put these little, like these embellishments. They're like enamel dots, but thicker. I picked these up at a scrapbook show, and they're Jolie's All That Bling. So I'm not even sure you can get them online, but they have different sizes. They're a little bulkier than a traditional enamel dot. So while I was folding that, this is drying. So let's go ahead, and I'm just going to pick it up and make sure I get it centered this time. So I got it centered, or close enough. So I'm going to pick the front. So I'm going to pick this as the front and just glue it on. I was going to do a 3D, there comes a decision where you think, is there enough 3D on there? Should I put them through doing this small button as a 3D item? And I decided it wasn't worth it then just to do a flat item. So we have that done. Let's go ahead and put that back and take this. We'll put that, take these two pieces. So there's two pieces. We have these, and you'll want to put them back to back. You could just use one if you wanted to. I just have texture on both sides. So one's the American Craft texture is textured on one side and non-textured on the other, so I wanted textured on both sides. So what it's going to do is just match up. So we're going to glue them up. Glue them to match them up like that. So let's do that. So I do prefer using wet glue just because it allows me to have a little wiggle room before things dry. So I'm going to start, I'm just going to kind of place them together lightly first, and then just press them, get those holes lined up, and holes lined up on the other side, just going around. And again, you can add a different kind of handle. That just realize that the handle is only going to be for the, to lift the lid. It's not to lift the whole thing like a traditional lantern. So these are going to go on like this. You want these flaps towards the inside. Oops, sorry about that. So like that. So I have that hole, not on both sides, just one side. So that nothing can, I mean, you can put something through, but if you put a brad or something like that, that'll cover it, but it'll be bulky. So you have that option. I'm going to use something, you know, similar like the enamel dots. That wasn't perfect matching them up, so a little bit different when I'm doing videos versus just crafting to craft. At least for me. So I'm going to put glue just on the inside of both sides. I'm going to decide which one's the front. I'm going to make whichever the front one is the hole. So I'm going to cover the hole with the enamel dot. I'm going to match up. So you want to match up the hole. See a little glue in there. I mean, if you didn't have an enamel dot, you could just cut a little piece of circle, or maybe a rhinestone. I mean, rhinestones a lot of people have. If you have a black one. And if you don't have a black one, if you wanted a colored one, and you don't have a colored one, you only have clear, what I found is you can use a marker and kind of color it. I mean, it just depends on whether it stays on there. Or dye ink. I've done it with dye ink before. And I did it several times to get the color darker. So just look around your craft room. Most likely you have things that you can use if you don't have what you want. Or you can create it. Which is a lot of times I've done. So I don't care that I can see the glue. But I'm kind of pushing it through. And then we're going to take the lid. I'm not going to put those on. I'm going to determine what I want the front of the lid to be. I know at one point I had determined that, but I'm going to see where the seam is. And pick one as the front here. That has kind of a little, the way it scored was kind of weird, so I'm going to go right here. I'm going to turn it around like this. So we're going to glue it to the sides like that. So let me do one side. I'm just going to go right here, right in the middle of this. I'm going to show you in a minute. I have to be able to see it to show you. Oops. Just like that. It just opens up and glues on either side. And then we'll do the same on the other side. Just make sure you get a good glue coverage on that so it stays on. That's another thing that's a benefit about using wet glue versus like a tape. It tends to be more permanent than other adhesives. I'm not an adhesive expert by any means, by the way. Just basically a crafter turned designer. If anybody ever read about my background, I have a degree in computer science. And I was with an IT department for almost 20 years, so it's different, but I do need technical skills to do what I do. So there it is. So I'm just going to put these there, and then we'll call it done. So I'm not going to, put that while we're here. So let's go ahead and get the lantern. And what's nice is that it just fits right in. I mean, you can't lift it, obviously, but there it is. And the thing that I like about this, the reason I wanted to use a light like this, let me show you again, is these particular lights, and I'll show you the brand, but there's other brands. I can put the link in the product description or video, whatever. But I'm going to hook it in there. I made my own hook. I'm going to kind of angle it to get it in. So it's this particular one, I'm just kind of, so you can see it's hanging. So I'm going to put it in there, it's going to hang. So this particular lamp, the reason I purchased it was this. This is the brand, and it has a little remote control. So I can turn it on, and I know we're not going to be able to really see it that well, but unless I change the angle of the video. But I'm going to turn it on. I think I turned it off. Let me make sure. There we go. So by default, this one turns on when you, sometimes you have a little cheat thing, but if you can see this, I'm just going to take it off so you can see it. So I have this little remote control, and I can turn it off, and I can turn it on, and I can put it a certain color, solid, So this one's a bright one. So if you didn't have yellow vellum and you want it to look yellow, you could do that with the lamp. So you can kind of see it's a little bit different if you can see it kind of jiggling around. And what I thought would be fun is if, you know, you gave this to somebody, obviously they wouldn't have the remote unless you got a single remote. But it's more like a regular lantern. So I'll have better pictures. I mean, if you go to the product description, hopefully you saw the other pictures. So that's it. That finishes the project. I'll keep the light on here. And there you go. So you could put a little small gift or gift card inside, or you could put a regular tea light, just a standard battery operated tea light. Just a little fun little project. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please give me a thumbs up, and I thank you so much for watching.